It was one of those Saturdays when peace finally feels deserved. The coffee was still steaming, my 6-year-old was sprawled on the carpet building a Lego fortress, and I was finally exhaling after a week of deadlines and HOA emails written in all caps about trash can placement violations. Then I heard the knock. Not a neighborly tap. A firm, rhythmic, authoritative knock. When I opened the door, 2 people stood on my porch. One had a clipboard and a badge swinging gently from a lanyard. I froze for a second, almost spilling my coffee. The woman introduced herself calmly. "I'm from Child Protective Services." For a moment, my heartbeat filled the silence. CPS? My stomach dropped through the floorboards. Before we unravel how this false report turned into an all-out investigation, hit subscribe so you don't miss these real homeowner revenge stories where the evidence, the law, and karma line up perfectly. I glanced at my son, safe, laughing, and then back at her, baffled. "There must be some mistake," I managed to say. She nodded with practiced politeness. "We received a report. We just need to confirm everything's fine." Behind her, a familiar figure peeked around the corner. My next-door neighbor, the HOA president himself, the king of clipped lawns and passive-aggressive emails. He had that smug half-smile, the kind that said, "Finally, gotcha." Let me rewind a few weeks. When my family bought our home in Crestwood Glen, I thought joining the HOA meant community barbecues and shared lawn equipment. Instead, it meant surveillance. The president, Craig, retired accountant with binoculars permanently attached to his soul, kept a rolling spreadsheet of infractions. Tall grass, holiday lights taken down 2 days late, a recycling bin left out too long. He documented it all like a park ranger tracking endangered species. Our first clash happened over something trivial, a treehouse. I built one with my son, nothing fancy, just a wooden platform and a rope ladder. Within a day, I got an email stating that unsanctioned structures constitute a violation of Article 7B. I almost laughed. It was a treehouse, not a launch site. But I stayed polite. I explained it was temporary. That's when Craig's tone changed. He started pointing out everything. The slightly faded mailbox paint, the garden hose, too visible from the street. Then came the anonymous complaint letters in our mailbox. Finally, the trash bag mix-up. Somehow one of Craig's own trash bags appeared in front of my driveway one morning, and within hours I got an HOA fine notice. It was petty warfare, but manageable, until that CPS visit. The investigator stepped inside. I noticed her eyes scanning the living room. Her expression neutral, but familiar somehow. Was it her voice? Her name tag read S. Latham. My pulse slowed a bit. My aunt's name was Susan Latham. But that couldn't be her, could it? A few questions later, she looked up from her clipboard, recognition dawning. "Wait, Jamie." She smiled. "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was you." My jaw dropped. It was her, my Aunt Susan, on my doorstep in an official capacity. She took a quick breath, composed herself, and said quietly, "Don't worry. I'll handle this professionally, but tell me everything once we're done." I swear, the look on Craig's face when my aunt flashed me that warm familial grin was cinematic. He was standing across the street pretending to check his mail, watching us like a spy in a bad thriller. The smugness drained right out of him as soon as Aunt Susan waved. But I wasn't in the clear yet. She explained that the report included claims that my child was often unsupervised after dark, and that the home environment may be unsafe due to clutter and visible hazards. It was absurd and maliciously specific. Someone had clearly been watching our home closely enough to invent stories. I knew instantly who. So, I decided that if Craig wanted to play investigative watchdog, he was about to witness what real investigation looked like. That night, I went into technician mode, checked Wi-Fi signals for unknown devices, scrolled through the HOA bylaws, and ordered a set of trail cams on express shipping. I wasn't going to live with this paranoia any longer. By the time the first camera blinked to life near our fence post, the adrenaline had burned away my fear. I wasn't the anxious homeowner anymore. I was gathering evidence. And I suspected, by the end of all this, Craig's name would be on my clipboard. Over the next week, my quiet suburban life turned into a low-key espionage mission. I started timing my routines carefully. When I took out the trash, when I left for work, when porch lights flicked on. Every subtle anomaly started to stand out like neon ink on a white page. The very first footage confirmed it. Craig was sneaking around my property after dark. There he was, at 10:47 p.m., cell phone flashlight in one hand, camera in the other. He roamed the edge of my yard taking photos of my back porch, the treehouse, and, unbelievably, peering over our wooden fence. I watched the recording 3 times, my stomach sinking deeper with each replay. The timestamp wasn't just damning. It was artful, like fate had gift-wrapped the evidence I needed. I sent the clip to Aunt Susan that morning. She called within minutes, voice sharp with disbelief. "Jamie, this isn't just harassment. That's trespassing." I agreed, and now I needed more. So I set traps, digital ones. I hid a discreet GPS tracker inside a decorative stone by the gate. A motion-activated camera peeked through our flower bed. Even my old doorbell cam received an upgrade. High-def night vision, microphone, cloud syncing. I wasn't just documenting his snooping. I was building a timeline that would hold up anywhere, from an HOA hearing to a courtroom. Meanwhile, Craig was getting bold. He started leaving printed notices taped to my door accusing me of non-compliance with community safety mandates. Once, he even mailed a letter to my workplace, summarizing supposed ongoing investigations about my parenting. That was the moment the fight became surgical. I called a property attorney named Grace Whitmore. She specialized in HOA disputes and had the poised temperament of someone who'd seen every neighbor feud imaginable. After a quick review of my videos, she tilted her glasses down, smirked slightly, and said, "Mr. President is about to learn the difference between governance and persecution." Grace helped me file formal complaints, one to the HOA Oversight Committee, another to the County Code Enforcement Office, and, quietly, one to the Sheriff's Department regarding possible stalking and defamation. But the real masterstroke came next. We decided to bait him. Craig's obsession centered around the treehouse, that wooden symbol of defiance in his kingdom of uniform lawns. So I accidentally left an email printed out and half visible through my kitchen window. It referenced an unregistered construction extension behind the treehouse and a potential structural hazard. It was fake, of course, just enough to sound plausible. 3 nights later, 12:36 a.m., motion alert triggered. There he was again, flashlight beam darting. He had a tape measure. A tape measure. He was trying to record dimensions of the supposed structure. But what Craig didn't realize was that I wasn't asleep this time. From the dark of my car parked down the street, I watched him through binoculars, recording every movement. My deputy friend, Tyler, waited just half a block away. We'd coordinated the timing down to the minute. "Confirmed visual," I whispered over the phone. "Trespassing, photographing property." Tyler walked up calmly, flashlight raised, badge gleaming in the dark. "Evening, Mr. Craig," he said. "Nice night for surveying property that isn't yours." Craig froze like a wax statue melting under daylight. The look on his face when he realized he'd been caught mid-snoop was something I'd replay years later with deep satisfaction. Tyler kept it professional, issued a trespass warning, noted his statements, and advised he leave immediately. I stayed in the background, recording everything. The next morning, I uploaded the footage to a cloud drive labeled HOA evidence file. Grace reviewed it and said, "We've got him cornered. Now, let's make sure it's not just legal payback. It's public." Because in HOA politics, the courtroom isn't where reputations die, the meeting room is. We requested an emergency HOA session to address member misconduct and procedural abuses. Craig, still oblivious to how much evidence stacked against him, agreed, probably thinking he could twist the narrative first. He even sent a mass email to the neighborhood, claiming, "Certain residents are under legitimate investigation for endangering the community." I printed it out and smiled grimly. Our sting wasn't over. There was one more move left, one final humbling reveal that would strip Craig of the power he'd wielded for years. Because when the next meeting started, he wouldn't just be facing me. He'd be facing Aunt Susan. The HOA meeting was set for a Thursday evening in the clubhouse, a low-ceilinged room that smelled faintly of folding chairs, burnt coffee, and moral superiority. Neighbors filled the seats, murmuring as Craig arranged his papers at the front table like a general about to deliver a victory speech. I walked in carrying a single folder. Grace the attorney followed, crisp and unreadable. Then came Aunt Susan, wearing her CPS badge clipped to her blazer. The effect was instant. The room fell quiet enough to hear the fluorescent lights hum. Craig's smile flickered when he saw her. For context, He still had no idea that the CPS investigator who'd shown up at my door was related to me, or that she was now here, on record, to clarify the false report he had filed. He opened the meeting with rehearsed confidence. The first item on tonight's agenda concerns community safety concerns involving property maintenance and family welfare. He shot me a performative look of concern, which probably would have worked if his face wasn't already glistening with panic sweat. I waited for my cue. Grace stood. Point of order. Before this board proceeds, my client wishes to submit evidence regarding malicious harassment and misuse of HOA authority. A flutter of whispers spread. Craig blinked, confused. This wasn't scheduled. It's directly related, Grace interrupted smoothly, to the subject you just raised. She handed flash drives to each board member. On the screen behind her, the footage from my yard played. Craig sneaking along the fence line, taking photos, stretching that ridiculous tape measure. The murmurs turned into audible gasps. Someone in the back muttered, "Is that at night?" Then Grace added, steady as an anchor, "This footage was collected legally from motion-activated devices on Mr. Carver's property. The date stamps correspond to the time of the anonymous CPS report." "Cue Aunt Susan." She stepped forward, cleared her throat, and said, "And that report came from this man, Craig Hembry." Every head turned. Craig went pale. Aunt Susan continued, calm but firm. "We traced the submission through the state hotline logs. It included details only someone physically watching the property could have known. Upon investigation, no safety concerns were found. The report was determined to be malicious in nature. Falsifying reports to state agencies carries serious penalties." You could hear the collective inhale of 30 stunned homeowners. Craig tried to stammer something about misunderstandings and miscommunication. Grace didn't even blink. "Misunderstanding is when you forget to pay dues," she said. This was targeted defamation. He turned red and sputtered. "You don't understand what this neighborhood needs. There are rules." "Rules," I cut in for the first time, "don't mean you get to weaponize them against families." The board chair, an elderly woman who'd endured 3 years of Craig's micromanaging emails, finally spoke. "Mr. Hembry, please step back from your post." Effective immediately, it was as if the whole neighborhood exhaled together. The aftermath unfolded swiftly. The sheriff's office opened a harassment case. Craig's resignation letter circulated the next day, filled with self-pitying lines about ungrateful residents. The HOA hired an interim president, someone who actually smiled. I covered our fence in fresh ivy, restored the treehouse, and spent the weekend driving nails with my son laughing beside me. Then, one afternoon, Aunt Susan dropped by again, not with a clipboard this time, but with chocolate chip cookies. "You know," she said, grinning, "I've seen a lot of vindication stories in my job, but this one? 10 out of 10. Could have sold tickets." Grace later told me the surveillance footage had made its rounds as a training example in a property law seminar. The moral was simple but sharp. When authority goes unchecked, sometimes justice just needs a well-placed camera and a few good allies. HOAs can enforce harmony or corrode it. The difference lies in who holds the bylaws, someone who builds community or someone who weaponizes it. And sometimes, the person knocking on your door isn't just there to investigate a lie. They're the twist that turns the story upside down.